All and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting for Infrastructure, Wednesday the 7th of September, and welcome to councillors, to staff, to anyone watching us via live stream. I'd now like to open the meeting with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And Lord, we pray today for the family, for the Dennehy family, who tragically lost their son, brother, and to all their friends and an extended circle who have been sadly affected by the war in Ukraine. Our thoughts, prayers, sincere condolences are with the family and loved ones of the young Dennehy man, and we want them to know that we're thinking of them, that we're standing beside them through this very difficult time of grief. In Lord Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, leave of absence requests. Right, who are we missing today, gentlemen? Mr. CEO?
We've got Councillor Henson is on his way. He's just advised that he's stuck in traffic, or just so he'll be here shortly. But yeah, and Councillor Jones, I'm not sure, hasn't joined online as of yet. We were expecting him to join online, but he doesn't appear to have joined the meeting yet. Okay, so we'll perhaps put forward a leave of absence request for Councillor Jones. I'll move that. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Those in favour, carried unanimously. And I'm sure Councillor Henson will be here shortly, so we know he's getting through roadworks this morning. Okay, Councillor Duff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders, both past, present, and emerging. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillors, any items of conflict of interest that you'd like to disclose to the meeting in relation to today's agenda? Welcome, Councillor Henson. We'll note that Councillor Henson's arrived. Good morning, Councillor Henson. Oh, okay. So I'll just now retract that motion in relation to Councillor Jones. He's now online. Good morning, Councillor Jones. Welcome.
Morning, everybody. Welcome. Apologies for being late.
No, that's okay.
He's doing a marathon.
Thank you. So we'll just retract that. We've got everyone here. Okay, no conflict of interest. Any conflict of interest items to disclose? Okay. We'll move on then, if not to item 5.1, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 3rd of August 2022. It is at 5 on the agenda. Recommended that the minutes of the Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting held on the 3rd of August 2022 be received. Do we have a mover? Councillor Erkins, thank you. A seconder, Councillor Potter. Speakers? Okay, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Move on to item 6.1, which is at 16 on the agenda. And it's I'd now like to welcome Councillor Jones to deliver his infrastructure planning works, construction and maintenance portfolio report. Welcome. Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Thanks, Mayor. Everyone's got it in front of them and it's online for everyone to read. I'd like to present the report as read and be accepted. I'd like to move that my portfolio report for the month of September be received.
Thank you, Councillor. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson, thank you. Speakers? No? Okay. We'll go straight to the vote then. Those in favour? Carry unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor 6.2, Acting CEO. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, councillors, we did have a representative from the Queensland Reconstruction Authority joining us today to discuss the flood damage update, but has unfortunately been unable to make the meeting this morning. So it does what we are looking at rescheduling that till the next standing committee. So yeah, we're certainly still keen for them to address council. So the recommendation would be that council lay this matter on the table until the Livability Standing Committee meeting next week.
Okay, do we have a mover? Mover? Yep, thanks Councillor Potter. Second, Councillor Henson. Okay, motion is that the item 6.2 lay on the table until the Livability Standing Committee meeting on the 14th of September. Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.3 at 31 is in relation to procurement of contractors, and we have that report in front of us. Through you, Acting General Manager, to Manager Searle, we'll go to the officers to provide us with an overview of the report. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, I'll just hand to Kev. He's the author of the report. Thanks.
Thanks, Tim. We were discussing at the last infrastructure meeting just about, and it was primarily in the context of flood damage repair work being undertaken, and there was some information that we needed to provide back to Council, and it was primarily in relation to the criteria that we've used to award works for our contractors, and how we're actually getting contractors to deliver our work, and how reasonable are the offers that we've currently got. And so to date we've let two contracts, essentially two packages of work for our flood damage. We've largely completed the first package and probably 80% through the second package. But in terms of the criteria that we're using to award contracts, and I'm talking specifically about those two contracts that we've let to date, and bearing in mind there are expected to be a number of up-and-coming contracts that are to be awarded through our flood damage work. So typically it is our non-price criteria and price criteria, and there's some percentage points there that we are basing the assessment on. So previous relevant experience, availability of resources and program, local content, and the price criteria there, price and value for money. We do have quite a high weighting on the availability of resources and program for our flood damage, and it's in we are under the pump, I suppose, so to speak, with our timeframes with flood damage, and so there is an expectation that we get into the work and get it done as quickly as possible. So yeah, so that's the criteria that essentially we're using. The next section was how we're actually going with getting our contractors to deliver works. So we use our internal procurement platform, Felix, and that was our primarily the method that we used in our first package. With the second package that we released, again we used Felix, as well as the more broader local buy system, which opens up to certainly not just the local contractors, but to the wider, essentially Queensland and plus. And how many contractors did we receive? We had a little bit of interest, but at the end of the day, we had less than half a dozen actually put in a price. So they're actually a bit scarce at the moment, and I think going into the future that will likely continue. We may struggle to get contractors, and so what we're looking at the moment is, are there ways that we can improve the work packages that we release, perhaps to make them simpler or more conducive to particularly local contractors to undertake the work, perhaps less complicated. So we are mindful that there's not a great deal of interest, and I think it's based on the more broader quantum of work that's out there generally. In terms of the final component of the report, how reasonable are the offers? There is variability in not only in the price but also in the non-price criteria. But perhaps overall, they're probably fairly consistent with the budget estimates that we currently have for flood damage works. And so that's the basis of the report. I'm happy to take any questions, councillors.
Thank you, Manager. It's recommended that the Council note this report for information. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, second, Councillor Potter. Okay, we'll go to the floor speakers. Yes, light?
Sorry.
You got your light on?
Yeah, the thing's pushed over.
Oh, good. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Through you, Mr Mayor, because of what you said about the shortage of contractors, I note that there was 2 contractors priced for the first lot of work put out, and then the second lot we had 4 contractors priced. Is it possible, rather than just keep going out to tender, that we could actually engage those contractors, because they're obviously available? And my fear is that if we don't engage those the whole lot of them, or at least the best of them, because my fear is that we will end up not being able to get contractors because of the volume of work across the whole state. So is it possible to engage the contractors that quoted, as well as the ones, like we obviously engaged 2, but could we engage the others as well?
Thank you, Manager.
The 2 contractors that have been let, the contractor is one and the same, and there is certainly a desire to keep a stream of work flowing out through flood damage, on the basis that if we do have a contractor that's with us at the moment and set up, that there is at least an opportunity for continuation of work for them, but it does, we still comply with our procurement policy, so which essentially is that we will go out and give everybody a go to price and be part of the works. So that's and we are releasing them in packages as we have our submissions approved. There is an option to package the work up so that you've got quite a significant amount of work that we potentially go out to invitation to offer, which may attract larger companies, perhaps not from council, from the region. The larger the work, the more potentially the more attractive they are for some of these larger companies. But we haven't done that at the moment. As we've had our various submissions, the smaller submissions, and in the context of small, I'm talking about $2 to $3 million contracts. That's the sort of packages that we've done for those 2, and likely to continue to do with the rest of the flood damage packages.
We'll stay with you, Councillor Duff.
So through you, Mr Mayor, so what I'm suggesting is that we speed the whole process up, that we get the packages, rather than just one package and go out and get 4 people apply, have, now do 4 packages and get the 4 people and use the whole lot of them, because everybody's wanting this work to be done very quickly. It's taking a long time. We've got thousands of roads. Is an option to speed the whole thing up by engaging the contractors that are obviously available right now?
Yep, I agree. It would be wonderful to get everything out there. When you look at where we're at with our approvals and even the submissions, there's still a lot of work happening with pickup, with inspections, and preparing the actual flood damage submissions, and that's going to continue for a number of months. We've asked the same question internally: how do we speed the process up? And what we've done with these last 2 packages is gone to market prior to receiving approval from URA, but under the expectation that we're reasonably comfortable with with what we've submitted for approval. So there is a risk there that if those submissions aren't approved through QRA, then we would need to review that the package that we've gone out for invitation to offer. But that was one of the methods we've used to try and speed things up, if that makes sense. Essentially, we're going out to market in parallel with the submission approvals rather than wait for the submission approval and then go out to market. And that's we wouldn't simply go out and release and go to market with all of the assumed flood damage on the basis that still preparing those submissions. But essentially, as soon as they're ready, we send them out to market.
If I can, just further to Councillor Duff's line of questioning there, Manager, the third round, could you give us some information as to when the third round of offers will go out, when that package will go out, and what sort of time frame would be to get through the procurement process and actually get that third stage of work happening? Thank you.
Yep. So our team are working on our third package, and it's essentially relates to zone 2 and 3, which is in between the Nanango, Kingaroy, and heading into that northeast or central east, I should say, area, and so that'll be likely complete in terms of the preparation, complete this week or next week for submission into QRA. We've also got another submission that is looking at the council has a number of capital projects that we've got on, and there's quite an overlap between flood damage and, say, for example, our gravel resheeting work. So we've actually got a separate submission that we're also working on, which looks to understand what the differences are. So, for example, we have a road that we're resheeting. There may be a significant portion of that that is eligible for flood damage that council doesn't necessarily need to spend the gravel resheeting work that is proposed. So we wanted to expedite that, our CapEx work as well. So that's the next, I suppose, in parallel with our submission 3, and that's likely to be submitted in the coming weeks as well. On top of that, we've also got our betterment. So we talked about betterment projects a number of months ago during our infrastructure standing committee, and we have on the list about 50 odd betterment projects, and we've got 7 projects that we've got listed at the moment that we're also submitting into to QRA for assessment and approval, and that'll be likely done this week and next week.
Thank you, Manager. Manager, probably still feel that question hasn't been answered. 3 questions. Number 1, so I might just make it a little bit more clear for you. Number 1, are we waiting for the QRA assessment before we go out for round 3 offers? That's the first question. Number 2, when do we expect those round 3 offers to go out to market? And number 3, when can we expect, in all reasonableness, what sort of date are we looking at before we see the round 3 work commence? Happy to take that on notice if you haven't got that available today. Thanks, Manager.
Yeah, happy. I'll take that on notice, Mr. Mayor, and provide some accurate information.
Thank you very much. Councillor Erkins.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I just wondered, with packages, so that's a lot of one job thing. Is it possible to split them to make, so if they were made smaller, could you have maybe more smaller companies might apply, so that instead of having, well, I don't know how big they are, but if you're looking for one big company, but if you had some smaller local companies would that make it quicker to be done? Like, I think all of us are keen to see the work done as soon as possible. Would that be possible?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Our very first submission, we actually went out to market and split that into 3 areas, geographical areas, on the basis that it may be beneficial for particularly local contractors. Perhaps one might be based in Mergen or Nanango, for example. And we tailored those. We called them, I think, Northern, Southern, Central, whatever they were. In the end, it was one contractor that won them. We didn't get a great deal of local interest, but certainly there was that thinking, that if there were particular contractors favouring geographical areas, that we could get an advantage out of that. So that in the end, it was one contractor.
Yeah, so because one of the things that concerns me is if it is one contractor, like they can't, depending on how big a company they are, they're not going to work as quick as the smaller companies. Do you think there is some way that we could look to attract some of those smaller guys to be interested? Or would you know why they wouldn't be interested in doing?
Yeah, prior to going to market in the first package, we did have a contractor information session, and I think we had about 5 contractors come along, and it was to talk about flood damage and what work's coming up, and particularly the type of work, to gauge, not only to gauge interest, but also to create some level of contact. Again, it was held locally, so there was an opportunity there for local contractors. Previous flood damage work, we've probably seen a few more local contractors with interest, but for this latest flood damage, we have less contractors, local contractors that are interested. One of the things we're looking at is the type of work. So there's a lot of gravel resheeting, heavy formation grading, which is generally classed as particularly non-technical. There are other and more than capable for contractors locally to undertake. There is some more specialised type work, such as even bitumen sealing type work. Which a contractor may not have a great deal of experience in. So we have been looking at whether to how we adjust the type of work that we have on offer, and whether we split out some of the more technical parts to encourage, particularly local contractors.
And I suppose, I acknowledge that, like all jobs, people are busy, and I suppose maybe some of the local smaller contractors are. They've got other people that they've got to work for. I acknowledge that, but I just wonder whether it would be possible to attract some of them. And but again, as I said, I acknowledge. It's the same as getting doctors; you can't get them. So grader and trucks, probably it's just the same.
Okay. Further speakers? Sorry, Councillor Duff. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. Thank you for the report. In terms of my first question, when works are complete, just wanting to understand what the inspection process is to ensure the quality of the work's completed, and how that feedback's given to the contractors. And the second point is, if the works aren't delivered to the expected standard, how does council respond? What do we actually do in those instances?
Thanks, Manager.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So we have an inspector, a supervisor that will not only supervise periodically the work that's happening, but also will sign off the completed work, and that comes back to the specification that we have within our contract. So there's various measures, I suppose, in terms of the quality and the standard for workmanship. And if there's deficiencies in there, then that's a conversation between our project manager, supervisor, and the contractor. To date, I think we've resolved any issues that we've had with workmanship, etc. And that's not to say that we won't get issues relating to workmanship or quality or whatever that is, but that's part of the project management process.
Yeah, thank you.
Stay with you, Councillor. Yes.
Manager Searle. The other question I just had in relation to that was with our own crews. One thing, sorry, now it's come back to me. I've had quite a few people in the community mention to me, like, the ground is still so wet, like it's quite sodden underneath, and we're trying to repair. I know we're all in a hurry to see our road network be returned to a suitable standard for obvious reasons. But the concern I've had from the community is that the ground is so wet underneath that is it actually causing more issues when we're trying to patch it? You know, would we be better waiting for the ground to dry out properly before we try to undertake these works? Few people have noticed that, and I've noticed certainly myself, I can empathise with the crew because I've seen areas where they have done remedial works and, you know, they've only lasted a very short period of time, and I imagine that is because underneath is so wet. That's the feedback I'm getting from the community. So I know we're in a hurry to get the works done, but I'm just wondering about the conditions and how we get the best outcome, and is sort of trying to push through and get everything done now while the ground is still so wet underneath the best option? Should we be sort of trying to take our time? I'm not an engineer, but that's certainly the feedback I've had from the community.
Thank you.
Through you,
General
Mayor.
Manager.
Short answer, you're absolutely correct. We would be better off to wait, but in the court of public opinion, we're getting a flogging if we do wait. So we've got to do these temporary emergent repairs, and we recognise, and probably that's the hard sell for the community, is that they are exactly that, temporary emergency repairs, until we get the full reconstruction approval. And hopefully by the time we get that full reconstruction approval, the ground, as you say, will have dried out and we can do a permanent fix. But absolutely correct. We're stuck between a rock and a hard place, unfortunately.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager. And just for the community's benefit, round 5 event, we have until the 27th of October to do those emergency repairs. So much of the work that you will be seeing will be emergency repairs that are being done under a very tight time frame imposed on us by the QRA. So we've basically got less than 6 weeks now to get that emergency work done. And of course, the long-term repairs will then be a second stage process once that's approved. Okay, Councillor Potter.
Councillor Jones had a question.
Sorry, Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Through you, just a couple of questions or answers to with the smaller contractors that Councillor Erkin's raised, and a valid point. But in my experiences with council, we've been through this. It comes and goes on a regular basis, and you usually find with the smaller contractors, they have the smaller machines, and when we put our contracts out or tenders, call for tenders, they haven't got the size of the machines that is required to suit that tender, and therefore they'd have to go and spend extra money, and there's no guarantee that they're going to continue to get work and all that sort of stuff. So the smaller contractors, they seem to like to move about the community and do the smaller jobs and all that sort of stuff that the big contractors aren't interested in, and that seems to be their niche in the market. But if we were to encourage there is a bit of a block there for the small contractors. They have to take a risk financially and all that sort of stuff to purchase or hire larger machines to suit the contractors. And with the road moisture and all that sort of stuff that Councillor Shoemaker raised, people do say, better off waiting and all that sort of stuff. But a majority of the people, they say to me, why aren't you out there when there's rain and moisture about and doing the maintenance on the road so you don't need your water truck and all that? You've already got your moisture in. And Manager Lowe nailed it on the head. It's you bug it if you do and bug it if you don't. And it's just something that you've got to work through and do the best you possibly can. And the men and women out there are doing an exceptional job. And I've only just got back into the real running of council in the last couple of weeks, and what I see, I witnessed the crew up the road here yesterday doing a great job. And again, as Councillor Shoemaker alluded to, there's moisture in the table drains and all that sort of stuff. The graders got down in there and made a bit of a mess and took away from the appearance of the rest of the work, but it wasn't too bad when they went away. So there is some restrictions on your smaller contractors being involved in the major works and flood recovery and all that sort of stuff. Because of that, they need to purchase extra machinery, larger machinery, and there is a cost to it. And it's unless they're guaranteed that extra work to certainly justify the purchase of that machine, it's a big risk for those smaller contractors.
Okay. Look, and the other thing is just to for everyone's information, we will be releasing a media release addressing many of the issues, concerns or raised by the community in relation to the flood repair works happening across our road network. That'll be coming out in the next few days. Okay, Councillor Potter, thank you.
Mr Mayor, that's exactly what I was going to ask you about, so you've just done it.
Thank you very much. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. Just in travelling in this morning, and I could have misinterpreted this by a country mile, but I thought I heard, and maybe we have not received or I'm on the wrong track, but I thought I heard an announcement on the news at 9 o'clock, and pardon me for being late again, that there was a 2-month extension on that 27th of October. Is that not being heard, or have I heard something wrong there?
Through you, Mayor, the one I heard was the local member got an extension for the farm work for the flood recovery. That's what I heard on the radio, but yeah, I haven't heard anything official.
What I thought I heard was because of the recent weather events that there was a revision of that, but I could have misinterpreted that, so my apologies for that.
Just while we're on that, Councillor, Mr. Acting CEO.
Through the chair, it's likely to be with the Q rider applications for that on farm assistance. So we can follow up. I'll follow up and provide advice to council. But it's because each of those applications have similar to the emergent works, have a deadline after the event. So with the multiple events, there's multiple deadlines.
Appreciate that. Apologies if I've misread or misheard that coming in. I was concentrating too much on driving. So no, I just wanted to make mention of that. And I've lost my train of thought for my second question there, so I apologise for a minute.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, if there's no further speakers.
Sorry, just in response to Councillor Jones' comment, probably what I was talking about, is it possible on them packages to maybe make some of them release some packages that smaller contractors that don't have the big machines. So there are smaller jobs. Is it possible to have some of them smaller jobs that small operators? That's probably more what I was speaking about than having small. I understand what Councillor Jones said. For smaller operators, you're forcing them into becoming big operators if they want to apply for some of those big jobs. But there are some guys that have got small, more than capable probably of doing some of those emergency repairs.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I think we've given this a fair old hiding today. Could you take that? Can you make note of that perhaps and see whether that's something we've picked up as part of the scope of the procurement process? Thank you, Manager. Let's leave that with you.
Certainly can, yes.
Yep, thank you. Let's leave it with you. Okay, if there's no further speakers, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.4, Tingura Village Road widening and curb and channeling at 33. Welcome, Planning and Design Manager Darcy. And if you could give us an overview of your report, we'd be very grateful. Thank you.
Good morning, Council. Thank you, Mayor. This request came through a couple of months ago in relation to the opportunity for Council to strategically invest in the village of Tingura around the potential for curb and channelling a number of streets. In the report, those streets were Muller Street, Magnuson's Drive, Hill Street and Home Street. In the attachment at the back of that report is a map just illustrating the layout. For the context of what that is in relevance to is around there is a ridge line that goes through the middle of Tingura, and these streets have been scoped up based on the work required on the western side of that ridge line. So we have also included a section of Phillip Street and Gibson Street to help with the network connectivity of the curb and channel. The 4 requested streets worked cohesively, generally speaking, but for the purpose of trying to have it all dovetailing quite neatly at the intersections. And once you see it on the map, I'm hoping it'll make sense. We included that in the scope of the works, but we've also broken it down by street within the report just to assist with how those costs are derived. Tingura is generally a village that operates with its drainage in an open table drain format with only a select few streets that have curb and channel in them right now. So there is an opportunity to re-establish the table drains through some routine maintenance that could be done within the village to assist with the scour of the water that is going down the hill, because it is quite a steep little village that we have. Unfortunately, with the way the drainage works its way down the hill, it's scouring out the shoulder of the road. What we need to do is to try and realign that water back into the middle of the table drain rather than allowing it to proceed out onto the shoulder of the road, causing issues for vehicles that want to use it. So the report there is for Council to review, but hopefully that gives you a good overview for this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager. It's recommended that the Council note this report and consider the project of the future capital projects program. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, thank you. Second to Councillor Shoemaker. Speakers? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. Yes, we've all seen Tingura and on our tour there some months ago, and I believe Muller Street, we could see the issues there. Just on our map it says Muller Drive, which is obviously a misprint. Just for some clarity and for any public, I guess, that may be watching, Manager Darcy, if that's all right through you, Mr. Mayor. On page 34, where it says the project scope on the second last paragraph, the project scope includes widening the road width and includes the appropriate pavement and seal type, 6 metre road width in Muller Street, Hill Street, Phillip Street, Gibson Street and Home Street, and 8 metre road width in Magson Drive due to road hierarchy. Can you just explain road hierarchy, please?
Thanks, Manager.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Henson. With Magnuson's Drive, it is more of a primary feeder street that goes into the centre of Tingura. Just like Main Street, how it is a main feeder that comes off the highway that takes you through on that southern side of Tingura. Magnuson Drive is quite a primary street, which the lower order streets are more reliant on Magnuson Drive to perform at a function in order to gain access to some of those cul-de-sacs that exist up there and some of those lower order streets. So Magnuson Drive also goes up over the crest as well as you come from the eastern side of that ridgeline over onto the western side. Just due to the high probability of traffic numbers up there, we thought that 8 metres might be more suitable and also somewhat consistent with what you would see across the region with developments where you see curb and channel go in with more recent developments. 8 metres is somewhat that level of service that we're trying to support for that volume of vehicles that would use that area.
Thank you, Manager. I'll stay with you, Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and again, you would have heard me in this chamber say for the past 2 years about curb and channelling in Tingura. I note the officer's recommendation and appreciate that the project in future capital projects programs. I'd like this chamber to seriously consider that, and we have further discussions on that, Mr. Mayor, at a future standing committee. Thank you.
Councillor Erkins, thank you.
Probably probably one of the things that I'd just like to raise at this point, we seem to spend a lot of money on having designs done. I mean, some of the designs, some of the costs, this one's 50,000, I think there's another one further on that's 70,000. Don't we do any of that work ourselves?
Thank you, Manager.
Yeah, that's absolutely, through you, Mr Mayor, that's absolutely correct, Councillor Erkins. We do have a small capacity in order to deliver the works that is traditionally delivering the capital works program with what we already have on the books. At this point in time, if we would elect to put this in the budget for delivery, we would need to go and outsource that. So what we need is a two-stage process in needing to go and do the design before we can go and do the work.
But the design
So we do need an
cost-
allocation of money in order to achieve that design, to then quantify that value of what we have in the report, whether that is accurate, is it cheaper than that, or is it more expensive than that? We've provided an indicative value of works, what we believe is around the mark, but in to provide further context in the delivery of works in the field, but also for council to then have accuracy with the amount of money that goes towards doing a job like that.
So that 50,000, do we pay that to somebody else to do a design for these roads? That's my question.
There's an opportunity to access an external resource to do that for us, yes.
So why don't we do it ourselves? Don't we have-
It is a challenge around the priority of work based on what we're already doing. There's a number of jobs that we're currently working on. If council elect to go through with this is what the design cost is, but we would need to go and gather an extra resource in order to facilitate
Okay.
that for us.
So from all the ones that I've seen so far coming through, wouldn't it be feasible for us to look at whether it's not cheaper to employ someone to do this, put somebody else on, because we just seem to spend a huge amount of money on costs getting these projects scoped. Is it possible to look at in our budgeting someone to do this rather than having it go out all the time for like an extraordinary amount of money, I would have thought.
It's a whole of industry challenge, is the honesty of the situation, Councillor. Trying to resource design engineers is very, very difficult. Doesn't matter whether it's this council or another council. I've done an analysis over the last 6 years of design engineer turnover. We're holding on to them for about 15 to 18 months before they go somewhere else. So there is a continual turnover based on remuneration and skill sets and what other firms are chasing that are superior to what council can offer. The quantity of engineers on the market is just not there.
So do we do some of this work? We do some ourselves?
We do. But it's all in competition with other projects that need to be delivered at the same time. So we are targeting the jobs that are funded, that are in council's budget for delivery. We are not getting ahead in order to do a lot of this project planning work because there is just not the material budget to support that. So we put it on the backlog of works to investigate for detailed design at a future point in time. So we have a future capital works register that we continually draw down on as the resources become available to deliver that.
Look, I understand all that, but I'm still coming back to the fact that we seem to spend an extraordinary amount of money outside of our council on design engineers. And I'm just wondering, again, whether it is not possible for us to look at, making some changes that we can look to see whether we can get somebody in-house that can do this. Surely it would save.
Thank you, Councillor. I think we've made the point. I might just close that one down now. Thank you. Point's made. Further speakers? And we'll come back to that shortly. We'll come back to that once we get this through, this resolution through. Further speakers? Thank you for your answers there, Manager. Councillor Duff.
Through Mr Mayor, I just wanted to know how many designers we do have in-house, because I know when I was first elected in this amalgamated council, we didn't have any designers, and we were still, for the first few years, able to deliver with the staff we had projects one after the other. And now I thought we had quite a significant team of designers, but it seems like we're still can't get the work done and we still seem to be outsourcing. So I'm just wondering, the first question is how many designers we have in-house and why we can't deliver the work like we used to be able to.
Thank you, Manager.
Thanks for the question, Councillor. I can advise that we have no more designers now than what we did at amalgamation. We have 2 designers, and that's based on council's organisational structure. We work and program our work to keep them operational 100% of the time. We have always got a number of months of work ahead to provide that strategic direction on where council needs to go with its program, to minimise the disruption with the delivery of council capital. And we do our best to meet the timelines and the challenges of what the market is presenting, whether that is within works delivery or whether that's procurement challenges or whether that's with consultation processes. There is a number of challenges that we are presented with that all access resources in order to deliver something of value for someone at a point in time. So that is part of my job to oversee the team. And in order for us to get the best value for this council, we go about trying to manage that as best we can with what we have. The market is just not there, unfortunately, to go and just recruit more because people are just not as interested in working for us compared to the alternative. So yeah, we do have a challenge, but we always had the challenge of trying to deliver works back in the day versus what we do now. It is an ongoing issue that has always been prevalent with our council, unfortunately.
Thank you, Manager. Acting CEO, thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just probably a comment that, to Councillor Erkins. I know you have only been with a short time, but we have over a number of years tried recruiting to these positions, and we would love to be able to have those resources on tap, but they're, as the manager said, they're just not there. So the guys are concentrating on those works that are in the program. So every new project that comes up, that's why we're putting a cost against it, because that's the worst case. That's if you want it delivered today, we have to go out and buy those resources, and they are not cheap. I agree with you. They're horrendously expensive, but that is the market because there is so short and no one can get those guys. And yeah, even in our planning area, we have tried the recruitment, but yeah, we can, and that's why those prices are given, because that's really to deliver the projects that aren't already scoped up are an additional cost. And when we went through the budget, I think when we were preparing the budget, the team said these are the projects which are in the capital works this year. And I think it was even mentioned at those budget meetings, anything over and above that will come at a cost, as example here today.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. CEO. We're going to move on from this. Councillor Pollard.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I just want to say thank you for the report. It's really appreciated because we knew there was a lot of work to do, and this has just shown us exactly what needs to be done. And I'd just like to say that it'd be really good to get this shovel ready, because then if any particular grants come up like the LRCI, then we're ready and it's right to go for a grant application. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Shoemaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just was seeking some advice in terms of the staged approach of these works. If you were to start the project with a couple of streets, which streets would you prioritise? Based on the report and what you've said, my thinking is you would start with Magnuson's Drive and Muller Drive, being that they're main connectors. But I was keen on your advice in terms of how you may be able to stage these works, noting that $1.25 million, I know I've been through every line of the budget, there's not $1.25 million there, but if funding became available, what we may be able to do through a staged approach. Do you have any recommendations?
Thank you, Manager.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councillor, and I do agree with Tim in his comments there. I think I'd need to probably coordinate that with our works team as well, just in understanding what that best, optimised outcome is for Tingura, given that it does have a few challenges up there. We don't want to create something that becomes a maintenance hassle as a result of curbing and channeling a section. And how that interface is between curb and channel and table drain is a bit tricky at times. turning the curb out into the table drain is easy. Turning table drains into curb and channel is not as easy, given that it is reliant on gravity to support the operations out there. So yeah, there is a few things that I probably wouldn't mind the opportunity to converse with my colleague in relation to it.
Are you able to take that on notice and bring something back to the next standing committee meeting? Thank you.
Thank you, Manager and Acting General Manager. Okay. Councillor Jones, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly, I just want to make it known that I appreciate the issues in Tingura, and the residents have certainly made a good case and brought it forward. But since my time in council, I just want to highlight the fact that this is a curb and channeling right across our region is a major concern. And I know I've dealt with issues in Bergen, Wandai, and the Nango, Blackbutt, Kingaroy, like the daycare centre, all that sort of stuff. This is an issue that goes right across, and we're talking a lot of money in Tingura, but I just want to make sure that it's highlighted that this is an issue, curb and channeling, for all our major towns and villages across the region. And I appreciate the fact that we're specifically talking about Tingura, but this is a much broader and wider issue than just one particular area.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Just in that vein, through you, General Manager, so Tingura is a village. It has effectively a table drain network of roadside drains. Is it the case that, similar to Tingura, Banarkin, Maidenwell, Highsville, Memorambi, Urulan, and any other villages also have the same table drainage system? So is this something that is common across our region in relation to the infrastructure that we currently have in our villages per se? Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mayor. Yeah, absolutely correct. They're all of a similar standard of drainage works. Probably the only thing with Tingura is particularly hilly, and so maybe that's the argument to say that the curb and channel is more valid there because of the scouring issues.
Right, thank you, that clarifies. But certainly this would need to be seen in the context of the broader regional curb and channeling program across villages.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And Mayor, if I may, those costs are very, that 1.25, that is a very high level estimate. So because we have no designs, we can't tie the cost down to absolute. So that is very high level estimate. So I just don't want council thinking that is the cost.
Yes, duly noted. Thank you, General Manager. I'm going to go to the vote on this one. Those in favour?
Sorry, I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion.
Okay, proceed.
The council note the report and consider the project in future capital works programs, and as part of the upcoming workshop to consider LRCI Phase 3 projects, and as part of the upcoming workshop to after consider phasing these works over. Sorry, can we make that staging these works? Yeah. Over future programs. So the project in future capital works. Part of the upcoming workshop, consider staging these works over future programs, over future allocation, or consider staging these works as part of the deliberations for LRCI Phase 3 projects. So, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that Council note this report and consider the project in the future capital projects program, and as part of the upcoming workshop to consider staging these works as part of the deliberations for the LRCI Phase 3 projects.
Yeah, we'll take that as an amendment to the motion. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson. Okay. Councillor Shoemaker to speak first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've certainly had a look around Tingura, and as you all have met with the residents, I agree. I think that the issues in Tingura really are, whilst it is what I refer to God's country, you've got amazing views of the region, those hills is what's creating the significant issues when it comes to drainage and particularly during periods of high rainfall events. So I just think this project has merit. I think whether we started with 1 street, 2 streets, I think we need to start somewhere. I note that we are, as per the recent general meeting, meeting to consider all projects for the LRCI Phase 3 extension. I just think this one should be added to the list for consideration. We've had significant discussions about this project and the issues in Tingura, and I would like to see our council try to work toward a solution. I note that that may need to be a staged solution, but I do think the people of Tingura do need to have some idea of when and how council may be planning to address their concerns. And I think the LRCI Phase 3 projects may be an opportunity for us to get started. I just think this project needs to be considered in line with all of the projects that have been put forward for that funding, and see if we can perhaps progress it in some way or another. I do certainly note that curb and channeling is a significant issue across the region. Been down many streets across different villages, towns in our region that have no curb and channeling. We know that that was very much the way streets were designed when our towns were first started, and over time that's going to be a progressive issue to try to respond to the community's desire to have curb and channeling across our region. I just think Tingura is a bit of a unique situation, being the topography of the land, the fall of the land, the way in which water roars down those gutters, and I would like to see us consider this project under the LRCI Phase 3. Thank you.
Councillor Henson.
Sorry, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. You took half the words out of my mouth there, and in relation to Tingura, as Manager Lowe has alluded to, and I take on board Councillor Jones' concerns that all our towns and villages, or many of our towns and villages, Tingura is a little unique in that it's so hilly there. I guess the one thing when you go to villages like this and you build or buy a house there, it's no different if you want to go and live out on a gravel road. You're probably going to experience some dust, but you're going to experience some erosion if you're living on the side of a hill or the top of a hill, that's for sure. So I appreciate your comments, Councillor Shoemaker, and certainly yours, Councillor Jones, as well, but certainly fully supportive of this motion. And I think in looking at the map and having driven around Tingura many, many times, I think I look forward to something coming back in design as to whether Magnuson's Drive and Muller Street are two that you would perhaps start on. I understand, and we've spoken about the lay of the land and how those other streets tie in with it, and I think full appreciation with how that's been designed and what's sitting in front of us today. But Tingura is probably, as many of our little villages, there's probably not much happened in Tingura for a long period of time, and they have, like the rest of the region, been absolutely smashed with weather events there. And when you're on the, like I say, an elevation like that, it's going to get a little bit nasty. And as I look in my emails on Friday, we are guaranteed rain again. Thank you, Mr.
Councillor Reckons. That's fine. Councillor Duff.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I thought that we were getting away from workshops which exclude the community involvement. I thought that these infrastructure standing committee meetings are where the reports come back. We talk about all of these possible projects, but my concern is when you get into workshops, you start to look at making decisions about what those projects are going to be, rather than having open and transparent discussions about what what the projects look like with the community involvement. So just a bit concerned about the workshop approach.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr CEO.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, so there is a resolution on the books that the LRCI come back to the November Standing Committee. So all of those works that have come back, so that will be in the Standing Committee, the discussions around that. So I think I'm taking this as direction for the team to include those, the staging of those projects in the list of other projects. There was 4 projects. We had the Wandi Industrial Estate. There was the council had identified projects, and that was to come back for those discussions at the November Standing Committee.
Stay with you, Councillor Duff.
So if that is the case, then perhaps the wording needs to be changed to an upcoming Infrastructure Standing Committee rather than a workshop, if that's what the intention is.
Okay, Councillor Shoemaker, change of wording.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As per Resolution 2022/98 at the last General Council meeting, Council moved that the matter in relation to just allocating LRCI funding to the Mayor's list of projects lay on the table until all projects are discussed for LRCI funding and a workshop be scheduled. The purpose of the workshop was to basically just go over the detail of all projects put forward. So the projects put forward was Wandi Industrial Estate, Hayley Street, Wandi Drainage and Road Sealing, Alfred Street East, Kingaroy Stage 1 Rehab, and Gorge Street, Mergen State High School curb and channeling or parking. The purpose of the workshop was to provide information about each one of those projects, and then so that council could consider and make the decision at the November Standing Committee. So that being the case, I'm happy to make some change to the report, to the motion that says, council note this report and consider the project in future capital works program, and as part of the November Standing Committee, Infrastructure Standing Committee. To consider the staging, take out upcoming workshop. Staging these works as part of the deliberations for LRCI Phase 3 projects. Certainly, Mr Mayor, there's no intent to exclude the community. The decision point is at the committee meeting. As per the budget discussions that we've had in previous workshops, it's really just, and no different to the mayoral briefings that you receive, I see it as an opportunity to receive information, by no means make decisions.
Okay. Seconder was Councillor Henson. Do you concur with the change?
You happy with that, Mr Mayor? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker.
Okay, so that's been agreed to by the mover and the seconder and duly changed. We're now addressing the proposed amendment as shown now on screen. Okay, Councillor Erkins.
I actually look forward to the workshop because, I'm still not on top of all this type of thing, and I believe that the workshop is an opportunity for myself to look more fully at these projects and other projects.
Okay, thank you. Mr CEO.
Yeah, through you. Yeah, just confirming to me, Councillor Shoemaker is correct. The direction from council was for us to workshop those projects, bring that back to council, and that in preparation for the November Standing Committee where they'd be discussed in public and decisions would be made.
Thank you, Manager. Okay, who hasn't had an opportunity to speak yet before we go to right of reply? Councillor Potter, you're fine. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Through you. I just want to acknowledge the comments that Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Henson have made about Tingura being unique because it's hilly and all the rest of it. I understand that, but you and I attended a meeting, Mayor, at Banarkin State School where they raised issues. Now, we talk about, as I said earlier, this is a region-wide problem, and Banarkin, I would suggest that as many, if not more, blocks of land are flooded and affected by curb channeling and drainage in that one particular area. There's about 8 or 10 blocks there that are completely flooded. Now, Chingura, there's a couple that I believe get flooded, and the rest of it is more about the washouts and down the side of the road and all that sort of stuff. Like for this actually is just specifically highlighting Chingura. I'm going to struggle to support this in the simple fact, I totally agree that we need to do something in Chingura. I'm not against that at all, but I just want to highlight the fact that this is wide ranged, and Mayor, as you know, Banarkin has been brought to our attention before Chingura was raised and made an issue of by the residents up there, and we haven't done anything at all to address anything down in Banarkin. So I don't know how the other people in the councillors feel about that, but just to specifically address Chingura, and I understand it's on the side of a hill, and Banarkin's reasonably flat, but it has a slight slope, but it is affected as much, if not more, as far as flooding people's blocks of land and housing and all that sort of stuff. So I just want to put that into the chamber for a conversation, a discussion point.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. And yes, we certainly have met with the good people of Banarkin. They have significant flooding issues through the table drain that runs down through the main street and then, of course, flows down into the right-hand side if you're moving in a westerly direction. Councillor Jones is absolutely right. We have major flooding issues in the community of Banarkin, and I certainly, as one councillor, support a project to consider Chingura, but alongside Councillor Jones, I would like to also consider the drainage needs, the village drainage needs in Banarkin, because Councillor Jones is absolutely right. It is a major problem down there, and they have been raising this with us for some time, the Banarkin community. Okay, so perhaps that could be considered into the future planning as well, Manager Darcy. Just on this, before we go to Councillor Schumacher for right of reply, I would like to speak to Resolution 2022/98, which has been raised here. It was a procedural motion that was moved at the ordinary general meeting, and I apologise for not being in attendance. I was away ill with influenza A. However, it does concern me, and I understand that the intent is to have a workshop and then to take those matters for consideration to an open community standing committee meeting. However, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, when I ran for election to this council, I gave a firm commitment to this community that the days of behind closed doors meetings would cease if I had anything to do with it, and that I would put that to my colleagues. I applaud the council on the introduction of standing committee meetings. I think that's been an important move forward in creating greater transparency. My concern is that this procedural motion is in conflict with the key principles of the Local Government Act, which underpin everything that we should be about in local government. One being open, transparent decision-making. Now, it concerns me in what I've observed here, that in the previous term of council, there was perception in the community that the closed-door portfolio briefings resulted in debate, engagement in debate, comments being made, opinions being shared by councillors, which could be taken to influence the mind of a councillor as to the priority or otherwise of a project. To my mind, a briefing, be it in the form of a mayoral briefing or a briefing or a budget briefing prior to a budget meeting, where councillors listen and absorb and take the information away, I see no issue with that. My concern is that these workshops, and I have witnessed this, result in councillors making statements amongst their colleagues in a closed-door forum as to the merits or otherwise of a particular project. And when we are considering the allocation of funding, budget funding, when we are considering options for projects across our region, it is my view that should be done in an open forum. Now, I don't expect everyone to share my view. That is just my view. As such, I'm going to disclose today that I will not be attending. I will be declining to attend the workshop to consider LRCI on the basis that it conflicts with my principles and values in relation to open and transparent debate, and that I feel that it is not consistent with the intent of the local government principles. Now, that is just my view personally, and I will be standing by that commitment that I gave to the people of the South Burnett. Having said that, I'm certainly happy to support this motion for this project in Tingura to be considered at an infrastructure standing committee, because I agree with my colleagues, it is an important matter to the people of Tingura. They have spoken and we have listened. And in addition to that, I would also like us to seriously consider the needs of the Banarkan community in relation to their village drainage as well. I'll now go to Councillor Shoemaker for right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly appreciate Council's support of the motion. In terms of Banarkan, I absolutely agree. My in-laws are in Banarkan. The town is sodden wet. It is crazy how wet it is there. And I don't disagree for a second that we should be looking at those basic core challenges in our region and trying to find ways to solve those long-standing issues. I also know in my time around Banarkan, I have significant concerns around the number of those dwellings on some of those properties that flood that aren't actually council approved, and I do think there are some bigger challenges there that we do need to also consider. In terms of the motion, the procedural motion to workshop the LRCI projects, I respectfully disagree with your sentiment, Mr Mayor. I absolutely believe that information is king. I think those workshops are a wonderful opportunity for us to learn and to listen and to absorb and ask questions. By no means do I think we should be debating, making comments or influencing decisions. I think the purpose of those discussions is always to, in my mind anyway, the reason why I do attend is to receive information and to understand further the real issues underpinning the decisions that we're making. I do think, whilst I am a fierce supporter of open, honest, fearless debate, I also recognise that as per our standing orders, we get 7 minutes to discuss many of these issues. And when you're looking at a long list of projects, that can be a real challenge. I never make a decision about a project until I'm sitting here in this council meeting. I've asked the questions and I'm comfortable with the decision that I'm making. So respectfully, Mr Mayor, that's not the intent of this motion. The intent of this motion is to share information and to try to work together to understand each of these projects and to bring our informed selves to every meeting and make decisions where it is appropriate. I do also recognise that there are many local governments, many other mayors and many other councils that regularly hold discussions like these because it allows them an opportunity to work together, and I think that's really, really important to learn and to listen together. By all means, I hope that the Tingura community is happy to see that their council is listening to them and trying to do something to help the situation there in Tingura. With that, Mr Mayor, I'd like to close out and certainly commend the motion to the chamber.
Okay, so we have the proposed amendment there. We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Jones, carried unanimously. Thank you. The amendment now becomes a substantive resolution. So we'll go back to that now to address. So we have that there, the substantive resolution, as moved and seconded by Councillor Shoemaker and Councillor Henson. If we could, please. So are we going to move it there, Mr. We have to remove that, or do we take the original movers?
Yeah, no,
We go straight to the vote. Okay. Does anyone wish to speak now? Otherwise, we'll go straight to the vote. Councillor Erkins.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I might be out of order in asking this, but when you said about the workshops, why can a workshop not be attended by members of the community? If you're concerned that things are being done without the community, I can't see why we can't have a workshop that's attended. I mean, maybe I've got a different impression of what a workshop is, but I thought a workshop is where we get together and, nut things out and be able to ask questions in a more informal manner than in a meeting. And like that is a genuine question, you know, why, if we want to have them open to the community, and I'm happy for the community to come, why can't a workshop, if we think we're getting a lot of people, why can't we hold it in the town hall if people want to come?
Mr CEO, I'd probably take your, from a governance point of view, your point of view on that.
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, probably to Councillor Erkin's point, we do have another item I think Councillor Erkin's had raised where we do are looking at hosting that public forum for the development of future capital works projects. So that is something that the team are working on. So we are looking at doing that as well. So that would include discussions on that.
No,
sort of,
I'm talking about something completely different. I'm not talking about the community joining in the workshop. I'm talking about a workshop, but where the community can see, it's all open above board and see what's being said. The other thing is for the community to come and be able to contribute. So I'm talking about two different things. I'm talking about a workshop of councillors where the public are more than welcome to come and see the process, to see the points of view from council. I mean, I have a lot of times a completely different point of view from other members of the council. You know, I think my view is right and they think their view is right, but I think it helps for the community to come and see what our views are and how we try and convince one another. And I don't mean that in an underhand way, but I mean for someone to put up points. I know that I come in here quite often with one view, and then listening to the arguments, I find that I change my opinion. But it is difficult when you only have a limited time to speak, and everyone knows I like to speak. So at a workshop, I'm thinking that, you know, it is more informal and there can be more robust debate. But I mean, I'm not talking about it being underhand. I think it's, you know, the community more than welcome to come. But a different thing, GMO May, than what I said about inviting the community to participate. Thank you.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, may I suggest this is something we did discuss, the changes to the portfolio. We are looking at our conduct of council meeting, standing committee, reviewing that documentation. So I think that would be the appropriate time to look at, is there another format or for those workshops that want to clean or clarification of that. Yeah, it is, as the Mayor said, the workshops are definitely not a decision-making place, but I do probably have a view that there is need for those, for briefings, whether you don't call them workshop or whatever. There is need for officers to be able to brief councillors without being open to the public. And I think whether that be just to allow fair and frank advice and as you said, more informal advice, I do see a place for that. It's probably the Mayor and I might butt heads on this, but yeah, I think there's a balance, and I think as we go through the review of our meeting procedures, that's probably an appropriate time to look at whether we can set a different format up.
Yeah, thank you, Mr CEO. I think just in response, Councillor Erkins, if I could say this, first of all, so I don't like the term workshop, but briefing. I have no problem with councillors sitting through a briefing provided by the staff so that we can be fully informed in relation to the matters that will be coming to council to consider at a committee meeting. However, the reality is, my observations are that those supposed briefings or workshops have developed into the sorts of things that you're in fact advocating for, and that is debate. There should not be, to my mind, it is inappropriate to debate matters in a briefing or in a workshop, because that is influencing the mind of councillors, and that debate should rightly take place in an open forum available to the community to see. Now, this is the path the state government has taken as part of Belcarra. I fully support those Belcarra reforms. These are my personal views as one councillor. I am certainly not saying that council can't have workshops, you can't have briefings, but it is up to that's a personal decision for those councillors that wish to partake in that. But for me personally, I won't be partaking in it if I think there is any risk that we will be engaging in discussion or debate that should be rightly had in an open forum. Having said that, if council is of has the will to open up those briefings, workshops, call them what you may, to the community, open the gallery to those briefings, turn on the camera and live stream the briefings, then I would be certainly much more comfortable with that being the case. But should that then enter into debate, which is part of the proper process of council's meetings, then I would see that as inappropriate. And let me say this, it is 5 minutes, not 7 minutes, but it is 5 minutes. And my role as the chair is to simply facilitate the conduct of the meeting and to, as appropriate, speak as one councillor. But I've had feedback from the community, and indeed from some of you, including yourself, Councillor Erkins, that these standing committees go far too long. In fact, I have had feedback from councillors and community and even staff where we've been sitting here till, I think, we sat here till almost 7 o'clock one night in a standing committee meeting. And that's the reason why the local government regulations, the model standing orders issued by the Queensland Local Government Department, and our own standing orders talk about making sure that meetings are conducted efficiently. And that's why we have rules around opportunities to speak. But that rests with the council. I will work with whatever you as a council give me as the chair, as your policy, as your standing orders. I will work with them and I will comply with your wishes in terms of how you want to have those standing committees. But you cannot have your cake and eat it. You cannot have standing committee meetings where everyone has an opportunity to speak on multiple occasions, perhaps 2 or 3 occasions, and then come back to me after the meeting and complain that the meeting went too long and I didn't shut down the discussion quickly enough. Okay, so it's as simple as this. Councillors, you can't have your cake and eat it. Please take the opportunity to review our meetings policy. I know that our staff have already circulated that for feedback. Please take the opportunity. Tell us what you want. Tell the executive. Tell myself what you want. Vote on that. Implement that. And I will absolutely support, as the chair, my role is however you want to run these standing committee meetings. And if that means multiple opportunities to speak, longer periods of time to speak, longer standing committee meetings, I'm absolutely will be supportive of that if it's going to provide for better decision-making and better governance. So the ball is in our court as a council to determine how that will work into the future. Mr. CEO.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, Mr. Mayor, you've certainly indulged council on that subject. I think we just need to move back to the motion on the books and deal with that one.
Thank you for correcting me, Mr. CEO, and absolutely we will. But just want to make that clear, Councillor Erkins, in terms of your question there. Okay, so we are back to this as a substantive resolution. Is there any more speakers? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll move on now to 6.5, Yarmouth Street, King Arroyo Road, Widening and Curb and Channeling. Now that is at 36. Again to you. Thank you, Manager Darcy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report was a request that I received from a member of the community around the consideration of facilitating some curbing and channeling on the northern approach coming into King Arroyo along Yarmouth Street. Very similar aspects of our previous discussion around preliminary planning, high-level value, indicative quantities on what would need to be done in order to achieve the outcome that is being sought. This report looks at curbing and channeling from Banksia Drive along the frontage of the hospital down to Albert Street as one section, and then there's a second section between King Street and Edward Street. The section between Edward Street and Albert Street is already curbed and channelled and pavement widened, but in order for curbing and channeling to do its job correctly, we do need to get it on the correct alignment, and also with this particular street we would need to work very closely with Main Roads, given it is the state highway coming into town, so we need to work within the parameters that they set for us. But at the same time, wanting to provide council with some indicative idea on what this looks like as well for future consideration. So present the report. There is a plan as well, once again, to help with trying to understand what I've just mentioned. as an attachment to the report, but welcome any questions from councillors in relation to it.
Thank you, Manager Darcy. We do have the recommendation that Council note the report and consider the project in future capital projects program. Do we have a mover? Councillor Potter, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Henson. We'll go to Councillor Potter shortly. I just would like to make the committee aware. So I brought this matter forward at the request of Mrs. Cheryl Dalton, who raised the issue in relation to the entry to Kingaroy, and particularly the aesthetics, but I imagine there's obviously some key, obviously drainage issues as well to be cognizant of here. Okay, we'll go to Councillor Potter. Thank you, Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I noticed you've got there from Banksia through to Albert Street all in one pricing. Just wondering if it's possible to get a pricing basically from that driveway to Albert Street in that short section as well, because I think for starters that might be for me a really good section, and that would sort of appease the hospital a little bit or Queensland Health a little bit, and then maybe worry about the other parts later, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Manager Darcy, feedback on that suggestion? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we can do that, Councillor Potter. The reason for that is that there has been some recent works done up there that we have assisted the state government with the driveway coming off the highway into the recently completed hospital. The team did a great job in getting that outcome up there. It is a very good platform for highway access, but it's also a very good tie-in point for works with the drainage that needs to go through there. There is a little crest that's in the middle of that a lot of us don't see, but the ability for us is to then shed the water in each direction from there. So it is an easy one to facilitate.
Thank you, Manager. Further speakers? Councillor Shoemaker.
Just a couple of questions. Thanks for the report. Certainly agree. I think that new hospital entrance is a really great outcome. In terms of road widening, I was just more interested in what that actually entails. Do we have to lose footpath or car parks, or how does the road widening actually work? Is it just changing the painting of the lines?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. There is actually a fair bit that goes on with trying to get a highway profile of pavement, particularly on the existing shoulder is where the body of work would be. This would need to be a very strategic project working with Main Roads on what they foresee the needs for movements, particularly on the western side of the highway, and where we need turning lanes, for an example.
Yeah.
Where would they like that? The challenge is on that northern side, particularly north of King Street, is that you've got about half a dozen cul-de-sacs that all would like their own right turn lane. But then we've also got contradicting intersections on the eastern side of the highway in the same vicinity, and it presents a real challenge in trying to have vehicles occupying the same space to do an opposite movement. So we need to work with the state on how they want to see their asset worked upon. This report is around providing capacity for that and making sure that if you're going to put curb and channel in, you only do it once, and then you work within the parameters of that. We've come up with some basic configurations on how we've created quantities in this report. It is, as mentioned earlier, it is at a high level. So we have an idea on what that looks like. We haven't compromised the footpath from Banksia down to the hospital. There is a challenge right on the northern side of the King Street intersection where the exhaust centre is, where we can get the curb and channel in, but the footpath would be an issue in relation to that. So future strategic issue if that were to ever come on board. But further to the north of that, adequate parking, adequate footpath width, particularly at the front of the hospital. You want that level of service to support that. You want footpaths to be able to assist, between parking and the front of door business that the hospital provides in the absence of any off-street parking. So it is one of those things that we do consider very carefully at this high-level stage in making sure that we don't undersell what the future potential is of the square metres of that area.
Yes, certainly I agree. There's a significant amount of traffic in that area, and it's great that we've started and got some estimates. There's clearly quite a lot of work to go. My final question, just in relation to the investigations of DTMR. I know since coming to council, because the rail trail crossing, the way pedestrians are interacting with traffic coming out of the service station there off of King Street, and certainly with the change in the hospital entrance now being off of Youngman, you know, it is logistically quite a nightmare if you are trying to cross the street, as I was only 2 weeks ago with 2 little kids and some push bikes. I just was wondering, we had talked about pedestrian crossings in that area, and it's noted in the report. I just wondered how things are going in regards to the DTMR conversations, and whether there's anything further that you can share in that regard.
Thanks for the question, Councillor, through you, Mr Mayor. The challenges around pedestrians crossing the highway, and you're absolutely right, there are a number of key nodes, and what I mean by nodes, around generating aspects of where pedestrians want to cross the highway. The rail trail is one that we've known for a period of time, and we are working with the state on that. We've gone through a series of meetings and potential options. We were hoping to have something a little bit further advanced this week, but working with Main Roads, they've got a number of challenges on their own books as well, so we haven't had the opportunity to advance that particular item at the rail trail crossing. It's one that is advancing quicker than anything else in relation to a facility that crosses the highway on the northern side of town. We've got some generic ideas on how that can work, competing against the King Street traffic movements and some of that undesirable layout that exists with King Street, and then also the service station movements as well. As mentioned earlier, there's a lot of competing square metres of, whether it's B-doubles coming out of the servo versus the pedestrians that are trying to cross the highway. Everyone's trying to compete for the same space. We are trying to get an outcome where we start to spread them out where possible. Our challenge is around trying to find the space to do that. So yes, it is advancing, but it's not advancing quickly, is the honesty of the situation. But we'll look to bring that back in the future once I have something at a level and that is presentable for council to hopefully receive at a future meeting. But at this point in time, it is very much a glacial shift of movement on that project.
Thank you, Manager Darcy. Thank you for your ongoing work in that regard. Further speakers? No? Okay. Right. Well, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Jones, carried unanimously. Thank you all. I now move that we adjourn the meeting for morning tea. Councillor Henson, thank you very much. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Back on. I'll now move that we resume the meeting. Seconded, Councillor Henson. Thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Councillor Jones online there, Bree? We have? Good. Okay. Committee, we're up to 6.6, Cumbria CBD Streetscape. The report is at page 40, and we might ask you to provide us with an introduction, if you could. Thank you, Manager Darcy.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Cumbria CBD, just wanted to help in closing out the pre-construction elements of this project. It's an exciting project for Cumbria, with the opportunity to do some really good work out there this financial year. What we've been able to do is work very closely with the community in stepping through the planning and the design for it. Working with some of those real parochial community members in some of the aspects of what they'd like to see in the street out there. So looking at that main frontage along the highway. What we've been able to achieve through the various forums of feedback is look at opportunities for some landscaping and some of the elements that aren't pure infrastructure, which is quite exciting, but also how do we assist in attracting some of the marketability of what Cumbria really has to offer out there. So through the development of the design and the subsequent pricing associated with that, we've done a costing on it which has valued the project $50,000 above what the current budget allows for. And what we've put in this report is 3 opportunities for discussion with the council around what avenue do we want to go down in those 3 options, and how do we finalise this project to allow it to commence to construction, because we have a challenge on the aspects of what the project seeks to deliver versus the available money to deliver it with. So there are 3 options there for council's review. The first one being the opportunity of increasing the allocation of funds to complete it, being that additional $50,000. The second option is around rationalising the amount of landscaping in the project, effectively looking to halve that compared to what is in the existing design. Or the third option is around removing the crossing and the street furniture that exists just on the northern side of the hotel and near the butcher there, including the notice board and some of those elements that are really important to the community out there. So depending on which way council would like to go, I've presented 3 options for your review and seeking guidance in how to close out this project to allow the project to kick off in the near future. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Manager Darcy, and thanks for this comprehensive report and the options provided herein. So we have the proposal that the committee recommends to council that council approve the Cumbia CBD streetscape detailed design for commencement of project construction with an additional $50,000 accessed from restricted funds for transport assets, increasing the project value to $350,000. Do we have a mover? Councillor Henson, thank you. A seconder? Have a seconder? Councillor Potter. Thank you, speakers. Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You've heard me support this from day one of becoming a councillor here. The Cumbia's had this on their agenda for a long, long time. If we go to page 42 and take note there, I beg your pardon, on page 41, and look at when we went out to the community the last time and extended it, thank you to you, Mr. Mayor, for more community consultation. That was on the 20th of October, and here we are 11 months down the track and wanting to start this project, and this has been in the pipeline for years. The $50,000 to me is a classic example, and Councillor Erkins, as you've expressed before, when we go and scope things and the cost of it with contractors and whatnot. If this wasn't to be supported by Chambers, I would be very disappointed in the fact that you could argue the case that the costs of being able to scope this project and the work that the team has done this, and there has been an enormous amount of work going into this with community consultation out there at the Cumbia Hall many, many times, and thank you to Manager Darcy and all the staff behind the scenes. This has gone backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards. I also thank Councillor Jones some time ago. He added $50,000 or moved the motion to add $50,000 into the project. We know with all these projects that come forward, and this is a classic example, 11 months ago we started at $250,000. With the cost of things now, with 30% increases across the board, you know, we're not talking that to add to this to get this completed now. Personally, I think it would be absolutely devastating to think that all the work that's gone into this and we reduce the trees or we reduce the shelters and the furniture that's been associated with this, because what's proposed for Cumbia here and what's the work that's gone into that, Cumbia will look fantastic. If we go back also to some community consultation, I'll bring to your attention at the bottom of the paragraph on page 41, feedback box at Roike's Field, and the last part of the sentence there just reads, in relation to 27 forms in total were received with 19 valid completed feedback forms, 8 of a duplicated manner with responses strongly against the elements of the project and prefer the town to be left as is, honestly. And here we are trying to better the entire South Burnett and all our towns and villages across our region, and we get some responses like that, which I find very disappointing. I can't express enough how much I'm in support of this. This project will be delivered, I believe, before the Christmas, which we've stated from day one. It was held back simply because of the centenary in Cumbia last weekend, the 100-year centenary, which is a wonderful day, and I'm glad we did, because I'd love to see this project done and completed by Christmas, and if not Christmas, depending on the weather events, of course. Cannot wait to see this happen for Cumbia. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Henson. Manager Darcy, if I could just follow where we're going here with Councillor Henson. The community consultation has happened there. We've had, was there any reasons? I mean, why would people take that perspective on those feedback forms to leave the town as is? Was there reasoning behind that? I'm keen to understand what concerns were there.
It was pretty much, as Councillor Henson's identified, was around they like the layout of Cumbria as it is currently. They wouldn't like the town to change in line with the project. Essentially, they prefer the profile of Cumbria as it stands right now versus the potential of what it can be as a result of that project being constructed. So they were more aligned saying, no, we'd like to just leave it alone the way it is. So it was very much a conservative point of view that was offered.
Conservative, but nothing specific that you'd wish to bring to council's attention?
Not to my knowledge, Mr Mayor, no.
Okay, thank you, Manager. Yeah, okay, further speakers? So Councillor Erkins.
Yeah. I find the plans very small, but it doesn't really look like it's going to change it in a great way. Those little triangle things, they're not the triangles like we've got in Kingaroy, are we, that with trees in?
More in line with what's in Nanango, as you see on Henry Street.
Yep.
That was some of the vision that was provided over the years from some of the strong advocacy through the community members in Cumbria, as well as the previous councillor helped facilitate a lot of those discussions. We've brought those discussions through the plans over the years.
Regarding the 8 people that complained, I know in Nanango we have people come through Nanango and compliment us all the time on how good Nanango looks. Especially I notice it from kids who grew up there, went away to uni or to work, come back, they absolutely love it. However, we still have those few people who do nothing but complain about it, and they complain about the parking. But what they don't understand is the number of vehicles and people in town now coming and shopping in town a lot more than when we used to have centre parking that was empty because we had no people in town. So, I mean, that does make a difference, but some people just don't like change.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, who was next? Sorry, Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, so I'm happy to spend the extra money, but I'm concerned that you've raised that some people are upset about it. And I just wonder, I don't want to go down the same path that we did with the KTP, where we've done all this stuff and we've actually got people now writing to, there's actually articles there's an article in the paper with people quoted saying that they're, not happy with what's happening, particularly the business owners. So, I'm just wanting to know, have we learnt from the mistakes that we made with the KTP? Is it, I don't want to spend the extra money and then have this backlash similar to what's happened with, I've got the Burn It Today paper, and I've highlighted some of the comments, which is actually having a really, really negative impact on the project. Miss Poole, it's cruel what they've done, and then we've got Barry Lonsdale, it's a negative effect on his business. Someone else has said that's caused serious hurt to their business. Like, there's all sorts of negativity, and you can still walk down the streets of Nanango and the businesses are really upset about it. So happy to spend the money, but just want to make sure that we're confident that we have done absolutely consultation that is going to that we've talked to the right people, that we've talked to the business owners, that everybody's on board. Because once we spend that money, it's really sad to spend a lot of money and then have, the community upset about it. So I just wanted to clarify, just question whether you're confident that if we go ahead and spend the extra money that we're going to get positive outcome.
Thank you. Through you, General Manager. Manager, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor, for the question. Yes, for the value of this project and the level of consultation that's been done, I think we have invested significantly in the communication of this project from a very early stage of this project. We've been out there for just under 2 years talking face-to-face with community members. For something that's material like this and the outcomes that it achieves, it is great for Cumbria. We have stepped through the process methodically in engaging with the community, talking to them, liaising with Councillor Henson about some of the feedback that we do receive all the time as to what is important to the members of that Cumbria area. So we have done everything within our controls and then built this into the project to help achieve the outcomes and then costing that accordingly. It is based on what is best knowledge at this point in time, and also we've also learnt a lot through the delivery of similar types of projects, like you've correctly identified, in how those costs have impacted on projects. And we've built that into this project already with what we know at this point in time. We haven't physically gone out to market to deliver this. We are at the process of trying to finalise the design to enable this to happen, such that we give a clear and accurate scope of works to allow for those works to then continue in the near future. So yes, it is exactly what we can do with what we have right now.
We'll stay with you, Councillor Duff. Anything further before we go to other speakers?
Wanted to raise the point about the KTP and the fallout we've had with that. Thank you.
Okay, well, so I'm just going to give everyone else an opportunity to speak, and then we'll go back to Councillor Henson to wrap up the debate. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, I think the designs and the time I spent with Councillor Henson and a few others there in front of Reich Service Station, we got to meet with a lot of the local people who spoke very passionately about the design elements that you've included in the plan. And I guess looking at the three options, you know, I must admit, because money is so tight, I did consider what would it be if we did remove some of those design elements to meet the budget and look to do them at a later date. Unfortunately, I do think that would really take away from the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. And I think so much work has been done to really try to find simple and cost-effective ways to celebrate the Cumbria community and all of the things it attributes to the South Burnett. I think it's wonderful that they are such a proud and passionate community, and being the gateway to the Bunya Mountains, you know, the way their town, their small town looks and feels really does matter, just like every other person in the South Burnett. I think these are small, minor changes that will make a big difference to the community pride and sense of place that community get from the town of Cumbria. I certainly hearing Councillor Duff's comments in relation to the transformation project, and I think with any project that council undertakes, there are always learnings. It was wonderful to see, however, on the weekend I was away for my anniversary, but it was wonderful to see that there was a fashion parade held at Masouli. It was a sold-out fashion parade on that new footpath, and just wonderful to see so many local as ladies, certainly that I know quite well, they're enjoying the fashion parade and enjoying the opportunities that maybe hadn't been explored before. And I think what's exciting about projects like these is it offers up opportunities to do things a little bit differently into the future. And so it was wonderful to see a bit of an atmosphere about the town on the weekend, and to see that demonstrated on Facebook, and to see the number of local people getting in and supporting local businesses, because absolutely they're all doing it tough at the moment. Cost of living is certainly starting to pinch. James, the only question I have in relation to the report is on page 48 in attachment 2. There's a lump sum there of $82,672 for council obligations. And I just wanted to understand, what does that entail? And is there any opportunity to cut any costs in that regard? Or what have you done in terms of reviewing these costs and looking at opportunities to cut costs, if there are any? You know, I'm always hungry to find those savings.
Sorry, I'm blinking. All right, thank you. Thanks for the question, Councillor. The council obligations was around a lot of our pre-construction, in all honesty, associated with it. It is around the design and the consultation elements, and just the administration of some of the landscape architecture that existed with that project as well, in facilitating the outcomes that we've presented to the community and looking to close out as part of the design right now. So wanting to get this all finalised, and the cost associated with that is wrapped up in that. as a committed cost, and looking to close this out in order to enable it for delivery. So that one element is, the continual consultation process is time-based, which also attracts cost, unfortunately. So it is one of those due diligence and risk elements where you need to do enough consultation, have good confidence in delivery, but at the same time, consultation is an investment at the same time, and that's what the cost enables us to do. Yep.
Are those operational costs like council offices being attributed to this project, or will those costs be capitalised?
So yes, we've got some capital costs associated with it, and as well as the project management of it. I didn't touch on that just then. Is around overseeing the works, very closely to what Kevin alluded to before, around and ensuring that the quality of the project is meeting the specifications of what it's supposed to deliver. So there is a cost inside that figure in addition to the design. So the consultation is inside that, but at the same time, it's a small percentage comparative to the design and the project management of the delivery of it.
Thank you, Manager. Councillor Potter.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for the report. But I just want to ask a couple of questions. Well, actually, just one. When is this going to be started, and when is it going to be finished if we go for option one?
Thank you, Manager.
I don't have an answer for you, in all honesty, Councillor. I'd need to take it on notice.
That'd be excellent. Thanks, Manager. Yeah, sorry, Acting GM.
Through you, Mayor. I believe we actually answered that on a question on notice month before last, I think. We'll have a look and get back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Acting General Manager. We do have a resolution of council on the books that the project would be completed prior to Christmas. So that was actually resolved by council, directing staff to complete it by Christmas. But having said that, I think that's before we had all these flood events. So, but there is certainly an expectation. I think Councillor Potter's point is there's an expectation in the community that we were going to get it done by the end of the year. But if that's changing around our circumstances, it would be good for council to know that so that we can communicate that back to the community. Yeah, thanks, GM.
Through you, Mayor. Just consulting with Manager Works. He's of the thing that we'll try and do our best to get it done by Christmas.
Yeah, thank you. Anything further there, Councillor Potter? You're comfortable with that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the only other thing is they do have a great day out there for Melbourne Cup Day, and will this affect the traffic movement and traffic flow through the town for that as well? Thank you.
Thanks, Manager Darcy.
Through you, Mayor. We can't confirm or deny on that one, but it should it'd be under traffic management anyway. So it's not going to if it's the through flow of town you're talking about, Councillor, shouldn't affect that at all.
Thank you, General Manager, Acting General Manager. Okay, any further speakers before we go back to Councillor Henshin? No. Okay, I probably just want to make a couple of observations. First of all, good to see that we'll do our best to get it done by Christmas. Thank you very much, Kevin and your team. Just want to note, $300,000 of this is coming from Works for Queensland, and we're being asked here to recommend an extra $50,000 from Council's restricted cash in transport assets. Now, from my view, I'm reticent to spend extra money out of our transport pool of assets, where we've often talked in here about the importance of spending it on our roads. But having said that, I mean, as Councillor Henshin has articulated, there's a lot of work's gone into this, and the community are expecting, I don't think a lot, in asking for us to do a small amount of streetscaping for $350,000. So I think in the context of the small amount of money, I'm certainly happy. I'm certainly going to support the motion. And I'm going to probably steal what Councillor Henshin often says here, let's do it once and do it well. and spend the extra money. So if I can steal that from you, plagiarism. Okay, so yeah, thank you. But over to Councillor Henson now to wrap up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and fellow councillors. And can I just, and probably for Councillor Erkin's benefit, in relation to, people's attitude in that. I mean, through the consultation process, and it was, as Manager Darcy has alluded to, for such a small project, the amount of work, honestly, that's gone into this is an unbelievable effort. Now, again, credit to the guys and girls behind the scene. This design has been probably changed 6 times, possibly more, in that period of 2 years. And remember, I said it finished on the 21st of October last year, so we're almost 12 months after that. Everything has been looked into here from parking. And on page 42, on the second paragraph down, the proposed parking and civil layout has been designed to comply with current regulatory and Australian standards for civil design and mandatory safety requirements. And the proposed parking layout consists of no loss of car parks, with 2 car parks being reclassified and upgraded to PWD bays in central access areas of the CBD. Cumbria never had any. And I think that's a credit to the team to design this. And honestly, it's been shuffled around in trees. And just on that, we had a gentleman, member of the public, was going to chain himself to a tree if we were going to remove any trees. Well, that becomes a Queensland Police issue then. But look, thank you, Manager Darcy and the guys and girls behind the scene. This would be a great outcome for Cumbria. And I think it's a small price to pay for something that Cumbria's been waiting a very, very long time for. So thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm fully supportive of this, and my fellow councillors for the support as well. Thank you.
To the vote. Those in favour? We've got Councillor Jones. Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, Councillor Shoemaker.
Mr Mayor, just in regards to item 6.7, sorry, I've overlooked. I potentially have a conflict of interest in that my son, Declan Shoemaker, attends Kingaroy State High School. So I actually drive this area every single day. I don't feel my conflict of interest would be any greater than any other person who lives in Kingaroy and has children attending school. But I'd probably like to declare that and ask Council to consider whether I can participate in the matter.
Thank you, Councillor, for disclosing such. It would be my view that your interest is no greater than any other parent of a child at that school. But I'll just ask our CEO to confirm such. Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I would class that as ordinary business of council. Yeah, as identified, your interest is no greater than a fair proportion of the community. So, yeah, I would deem that as ordinary business and no need to declare a COI.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Does any councillor not agree with our CEO's view on this? We're comfortable with that? Good. Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillor Potter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I probably should bring up the fact that I'm a member of the Kingaroy State High School P&C Committee and I have the role of Vice Chair there. So I'm quite happy to. I don't feel, and I don't have any children going to the school, but because I hold an executive committee, but this is to me, I don't feel I have any greater or lesser involvement with this than any other member of the community.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. As an office holder, Mr CEO, I do believe that you have a declarable conflict of interest. As such, I would ask that you now leave the room so that Council consider the matter. Thank you. Yeah. If you're comfortable with that, Mr CEO. Thank you. Yep, I think I got that one right. Okay, so councillors, I'd like to move, and I'm not sure how we word this, Bree, but I'd certainly listen to what Councillor Potter has said. I would certainly like to move that Councillor Potter is able to participate in the meeting and in decision making in relation to this matter, as I don't believe that her interest would preclude her from making a decision in the best interest of the community. So if you can get the wording for me, Bree, that's it, yeah. So look, I'm happy to move that. I'm very comfortable with that. Do we have a seconder? Yeah, Councillor Henson. Speakers? Any concerns, different points of view? Councillor Henson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yeah, look, honestly, this, and in the summary it says it's concerns relating to safety of motorists, the pedestrian and the school children. I don't feel Councillor Potter has any reason to not be in this room when we're discussing this thing.
Thank you, Councillor. Anything further? No, we're happy to go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Can we bring Councillor Potter back? Thank you. Thank you, Mr CEO. Okay, so Committee has resolved that Councillor Potter may participate in this matter. Thank you for your disclosure, Councillor Potter, and that will hold that resolution will hold now into the future unless circumstances change. Yeah. Okay. So 6.7, Safe ST. Thank you, Manager Darcy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is in relation to an item that was raised with us a number of months ago around the Markwell bus interchange and just the operations of that area that adjoins the common boundary between Kingaroy State High School and Kingaroy State School. It is a very populous area, quite intense at the end of the day. It's one of those areas of town where it is quite chaotic, but it works quite well. What we did was facilitate a road safety audit in order to understand all the challenges of that area, given that there's a number of competing interests in trying to occupy the same space. But how can we do this as efficiently and as safely as possible? So we've worked with some consultants in order to go and do an investigation, analyse the aspects of all the movements through there, considerations with the school. I've had the opportunity to liaise with the Kingaroy State High School principal as well on site and understand their concerns, both the former and the current. Sorry.
I might just pull you up there. I think just going back to the conflict of interest with Councillor Potter, I think that's probably a prescribed conflict of interest rather than declarable. So should actually be out of the room for that one. It's not one that we should be voting on. So I think it'd be best. Just having a rethink. So probably not a declarable conflict of interest, Council, but as a prescribed, as an executive member, probably shouldn't be in the room for this one. Apologies, councillors.
Yeah, apologies too from me as well, Councillor CEO. Yeah. So prescribed conflicts of interest. Council doesn't have any say in that. So unfortunately, we'll lose Councillor Potter. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Yeah. Back to you, James. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor and Pete. The analysis of this area is around trying to provide as much safety for road users, and those are both vehicles and pedestrians or students. What you'll see in the attachment for this report was also an opportunity for improvement of that space as well. So currently, the cul-de-sac movements operate in a clockwise function as buses enter in on that southern side heading west, and then perform a circular movement at the western end of that cul-de-sac. And then they align their bus movements up in one of the bays. And there's a series of concrete islands through there that help in moving students from the pedestrian crossing, whether that is from the state high school or the state school, and then they move down those concrete islands to then access the buses that occupy those bays. In order to improve some of the elements down there, we do have a diagram of what that indicatively looks like, but we also are aware of a number of items that can improve with immediate safety associated with that area, like some line marking and some signage. More business as usual elements for council, such that when those opportunities come for a broader program of implementation, that this can be included in those in due course. What this report also offers is quite timely in the aspects of that we do have some upcoming funding schemes to assist with school projects in the near future, and we will look to bring this as one of a number of projects for council's consideration back to next month's standing committee meeting. Apart from that, I'm happy to take questions, Mayor.
Thank you, Manager. So we've got a recommendation here. Councillor Schumacher, you happy if we go with the proposal? Yep. That council note the report is presented and that a further report be brought back to the October Standing Committee on potential opportunities to submit a funding application. We have a mover, Councillor Schumacher, thank you. We have a seconder, Councillor Henson, thank you. Speakers, Councillor Schumacher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly note, and if councillors are around at 8:30 in the morning, I recommend go park your car and just watch how much traffic comes through that area in the mornings and the afternoons. It's incredible, and it actually banks up all the way past the shopping centre. I know even in front of Ollie's Mower Centre that vehicles can be there some afternoons. It's incredible how many cars are in the vicinity for the high school. My question, I'm just noting your plan here, two questions, Manager Darcy. One is, I'm really mindful of the location of the Performing Arts Centre that Kingaroy High School has there on the corner, and that, you know, I've been to a number of functions there where there really isn't enough parking as it is to facilitate or support the KPAC. And I know that, you know, the only options are to walk all the way up the street through the dark and park down in the mud and dirt in the centre of the adjoining street. So I'm just wondering, in terms of this plan, do you lose those angle car parks? Because I know the buses already sort of pull up in that area, but you're right, there's no official line marking there. So how does this plan impact actual car parking in that vicinity for that facility?
Thanks for the question, Councillor. The angle parking that's there currently is around out of school hours, so you can't actually park there with a car during the hours of school, which makes a lot of sense to a lot of people. But for the out of school hours interests, you can still do the angle parking through there. I would need to probably go and review that report closely to see what the recommended signage is and the continuity of that signage continuing. There hasn't been any conversations with myself around taking that away, but I might look to bring that back as part of the report next month for consideration of a future funding application and Council's consideration of that. So if you're comfortable with that, I'm happy to report on that then, Councillor.
Yeah, absolutely. I just wasn't sure from this plan. It sort of looked like we may be drawing new lines in that vicinity. So yeah, just making sure, I think that car parking function remains is really important. And my other question, just on that intersection where you have got everybody crossing the street to come to school, I'm wondering how does or would or could like traffic lights ever be put in the area? I ask that because it is such a strange place. You really can't see very well when you're, you know, you do the drop up and you come up, and the way that you're supposed to stop with the pedestrian crossings, and I know there's been some improvements there for the pedestrian crossing, but it really is a challenge if you've come. I actually don't ever come past Memorial Park anymore because the near misses there is actually quite frightening. You really can't see the traffic coming out of this bus lane parking until you're right up over the pedestrian or near the pedestrian, and then, you know, there's so many other vehicle movements in the area, so many kids and P plates and those sorts of things. I'm just wondering how or if or what it looks like. I know traffic lights aren't cheap, but for that area it really is tricky. So just keen to hear any advice or insights you might have.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. In relation, and I think we're talking about William Street intersection, which is the immediate street to the east of the schools. That is, and you're quite correct, it is quite a very busy little operation at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. The functionality of that intersection is that William Street has what's called hold lines on the northern and southern legs. So we've got like give-way operations or stop operations, where Markwell Street has the continuity of flow. So it has right-of-way based on traffic regulations and operations. And there's good reason for that, such that it allows these sort of bus movements to continue uninterrupted in not wanting to perform a lot of the braking procedures associated with intersections, such that they've got the ability to move through that intersection unimpeded in the afternoon, because as you can see, there's like 16 or 17 buses that all go out within about 2 minutes in the afternoon. It is just a line, a succession of buses that all head out at the same time. And for the interests of traffic in that area, it's quite important. And I appreciate the fact that we've probably, you know, got an intersection under the control of something that happens for such a short period of time. But it is one based on safety more than anything else, and also around if the buses don't have right of way, then there's going to be a series of queuing that goes back through up into this cul-de-sac as well. And then you've also got the eastern side of that intersection as well that would be under the same premise, probably making the observed issues of what you've identified earlier probably even worse, because then you've got traffic backing up potentially past Aldi into the CBD, just through the sheer numbers that want to access the area versus the ability to do so safely. So whilst I could talk about this for a while, it is probably the best arrangement right now, because even when you think about a roundabout, it's the same premise where you're providing equal priority of movement through the intersection. Traffic lights would be exactly the same. So it's probably around the opportunity of what it is now is that cul-de-sacs are able to be free-flowing, and the access in and out of Markle Street onto Youngman in particular is somewhat unimpeded until you get to the traffic lights at Youngman Street. So it is around trying to move a number of vehicles out of that general area. In a perfect world, we wouldn't have a cul-de-sac adjoining two somewhat major schools for the region, because the state high school is quite populous. But it is the best of what we have, and I think it's probably as best it can be, in my opinion, based on what happens in that area, which is quite unique for our region. But happy to take questions further on what I've just mentioned.
Thank you, Manager. Further questions, Councillor Schumann?
Yeah, no, look, thanks for the explanation. I guess I'm just thinking, I have seen people pull out in front of buses and things there, because you literally can't see, there's that much going on. You've got lollipop people on two of the corners. There's that much going on that when people actually, and you wait for so long, like those vehicles actually coming down William Street. The reason why I don't come down William Street is because you have to wait for so long to be able to actually pull back out onto Markwell. And so traffic does bank up quite extensively down William Street. And I guess I was thinking about how do you enable that flow of traffic from William Street out of the area, potentially more in a more of a safe way, because it certainly is hectic. By the time you get out over that pedestrian, sometimes you are literally just, and people get impatient and they're just pulling out in front. And I don't know really what the options are there. It's, as you say, not ideal.
Yeah, the particular interests around Education Queensland providing off-street parking is one of those issues. It's not that indifferent to our CBD challenges, in all honesty, with the staff operations of those schools occupying a lot of the frontage and the centre median parking through there, which makes a moderate issue a major issue with visibility and safety. It's a discussion that we've had with Education Queensland in Kingaroy, Mergen, Nanango over the years, just around providing those facilities to their staff, because they are quite major employers for those areas. Like, they do possess a fair quantity of teachers and administrative staff, and some of those supportive services around special needs for our region, which is highly valued. And they need somewhere to park, but they use the streets in order to do that. So there is a broader context of this that is parallel to the interests of parents picking up their students each day. So yes, we've got a stagnant vehicle number that doesn't move between 8 and 5 each day, let's say, but then you've got some of those high turnover, high movement interests, right on 8:45 and right on 3 o'clock each day, which you've got to be able to mix the two, but then try and have a safe profile of infrastructure to support both interests at the end of the day.
Thank you, Manager. Further speakers? Okay. Happy to go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 7.1, LDMG Portfolio Report at 52. Sorry, can we get Councillor Potter back? This is her report. Oh, goodness. Well, welcome back, Councillor Potter. Apologies for setting you out and in and out and back in. We would like to ask Councillor Potter if you could present your LDMG portfolio report. Thank you, Councillor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just getting it up.
The Local Disaster Management Group update, the South Burnett Local Disaster Management Group moved to stand up on Friday the 22nd of July due to the rainfall received over the region. 48 roads were closed and an evacuation centre was activated whereby 10 caravans occupants were relocated due to the Twin Gums caravan park being inundated. The evacuation centre was closed Friday afternoon and 7 of the caravanners were put up in a local motel, including 2 dogs. And on Saturday, the 23rd of July 22, they all returned to their caravans. Further damage has occurred on our road network, resulting in council requesting and obtaining an activation for disaster recovery funding arrangements through the Queensland Reconstruction Authority. Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I might point out here that there are further rains expected with a double La Nina effect for September, October, November. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. We'll take that as moved. Do we have a seconder? Go to Councillor Duff. Thank you. Speakers? Councillor Duff.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I just wanted to note the fact that I've been driving around on the main roads and noted the signage now on those bridges, and I just think it's fantastic. And last night I noted that they've even got sensory lights, so when you drive onto, you're heading along, you're going to cross the Boyne River, there's a big sign that says beware of flooding, and the sensory lights come on. It's just amazing. It's fantastic. So I just want to compliment whoever was behind getting that happening or pushing to have that happen. It's wonderful. So thank you.
Yes. Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I did just want to point out, thank you, Councillor Potter, for the report. Certainly, it was, I did go and visit the evacuation centre, as did yourself and other councillors, and I just wanted to give a special shout out to Megan Nylon and the team who did an exceptional job there during the day, making sure everybody was fed and watered, and you know, it was wonderful to have some of the feedback from some of those residents who were quite shaken up after what had been quite an interesting morning for them. And yeah, just wanted to point out how incredible it was. Our staff just jumped up and acted so quickly, and you know, the evacuation centre was so well set out, board games and things for people, and yeah, it was good to share some stories with some of those people, learn a little bit more about their story, and make sure that they were fed and watered in what were not very nice circumstances. So GM O'May, if you can just thank your team for all the work they did. I knew you had to activate quite quickly, but the feedback was that, you know, those and the dogs were all very, very happy and very well cared for. So thank you so much. It's great to see those systems actually, probably a good activity just in terms of activating that and seeing how quickly how well prepared we are and how quickly we can actually pull together a centre like that. I was really impressed on the day. So thank you so much.
It's well said. Thank you, Councillor. Anything further? Any further speakers? No? We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 8.1, Water and Wastewater Portfolio Reports at 54. I'd like to welcome Councillor Jones back to provide his report. Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. And same as the infrastructure, roads and drainage, I'd like to present the report as presented. All the councillors have the report in front of them, and again, it's online for anybody to read. The only comment, all dams are full, first time for a long time. All the dams across our region are at capacity, and some are overflowing. I believe Boondoomba reached 102% yesterday. And yeah, so yeah, as presented, Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that they be accepted.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henson. Thank you. Any speakers? Councillor Schumacher.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. A couple of questions just in terms of page 59, the wastewater requests year to date and water supply requests year to date. So we're tracking at 34 for wastewater and 154 for water supply. I know we have got significant water challenges, I guess, and you know, quite a bit of our infrastructure is quite aged. So I just wanted to maybe, General Manager Manager Lowe, maybe you could provide a little bit more context around, like, is this sort of normal levels of requests that you would expect to receive? You know, are they trending down? I know we've put significant amount of capital expenditure in for water and wastewater networks. Just keen to sort of see what your thoughts are in terms of how we're tracking. It's certainly interesting to see those stats come together.
Jim?
Through you, Mayor. I'd have to take that on notice for the trending, but on face value, it looks about par for the course. I would be expecting that our water main breaks would be reducing to a fair degree, as well as our sewer chokes, because we have invested a lot of money in sewer relining, and we have an ongoing water main replacement program. But I can certainly bring that to the next standing committee if that's suffice.
Yeah, I guess just some commentary with some of these graphs would be really helpful, just in terms of, you know, whether it's sort of normal business as usual, or whether you are seeing significant issues across the network. The water quality one, I know there are residents in my area of Division 4 who have said, you know, at different times they can turn the tap on and it can be a brown yucky colour for a bit in the bath. I guess just probably thinking about that one in particular, if you know, where are we experiencing it? Is there anything that can be done? Sometimes I think this sort of context around some of these stats would be really helpful.
Through you, Mayor, I can actually answer those questions on for the discoloured water. It's largely when we have a change of water, so we got fresh water inflows. If we're switching from one source water to the other, it's invariably iron and manganese. So that creates the discoloured water. Blackbutt is probably the perfect example. We're off the Benuma pipeline at the moment, so we have to use Boubert Dam. Boubert Dam is significantly higher in iron and manganese. So your conventional treatment plants, they get all the water's clear. As soon as it gets oxidisation with chlorine, actually iron and manganese will drop out of the water and it's discoloured, rusty-looking water. Perfectly safe to drink, but it's just that it's a chemical reaction when it gets oxidised in the system. And if you've already got the system is full of the Benuma water, which is highly chlorinated as well, the meeting of the two creates a dirty water situation, and then the staff have to go around and flush, which we waste an awful lot of water just to get the water clear. But that's the only solution you can do. Once the iron and manganese is dropped out of solution, that is the only way you can deal with it.
Yeah, thank you, Acting General Manager. I just wanted to, perhaps if I could just... Oh, sorry, Councillor Potter. No, you go. I'll wrap up the end. Thank you.
At our rate today, we're probably going to talk about the same thing. So I think I just want to bring up the one point within this report is on page 60, I think it is, which is classed as a good news story. And I just wanted to point out that there's a beautiful letter from a resident, Julie Berry, that praised three of our workers, Reagan, Paddy and Cooper. And I just want to point it out that it's really nice to get these letters because we get so much negativity, and just to receive one letter like this from a resident just makes your day. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Potter, would you be so kind as to actually read the letter for the benefit of the community? Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dear Mr. Pitt, with regards to a particular quest number, this letter serves to highly praise Council's plumbing department employees, Reagan, Paddy and Cooper. These three workers attended in the dark and diligently worked on fixing Council's block sewer line during the night of Thursday the 18th of August and in the early hours of Friday the 19th of August, beginning at my property. It was a very challenging situation and included them having to visit other properties in order to locate and remove the problem, which was carried out with diligence and expertise. An excellent job on their cleaning up skills was also to be commended, along with their courteous and informative attitude to the customer. I would appreciate it if you would be kind enough to read this letter out at a council meeting and to also pass a copy on to Reagan, Paddy and Cooper. Thank you and kind regards, Julie Berry.
Thank you, Councillor Potter. And that, really does lead into what I was going to say, is that, we've got a reducing number of sewerage blockages, which is great because of a lot of that work we've done in the infrastructure. But when they do happen, and they do happen, it's a normal part of business. Our technical staff tell us it's what happens in council sewerage lines. Our guys were there within a matter of, less than hours, minutes really. And I understand they worked until 1 o'clock in the morning in the wind and the cold of night, down in these sewerage lines, getting that network back and working, so that when the residents woke up the next morning, they didn't even realise that they'd been there doing it and fixed it. And I just think it's a great story. We do a lot in council that we don't get a lot of credit for. A lot of things are shifted from state government particularly to council, and we do a lot. And we see, state government stand up and take credit for this and credit for that. Now, whether it's the evacuation centre or it's our plumbing guys being out at 1 o'clock in the morning in the cold fixing sewage pipes, it really is a credit to your team and to all the staff that work for council. Congratulations, very well done. And there should be more acknowledgement of the work that our staff do for their communities. But this is a good start. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Potter. Thank you, General Manager. Did you want to add anything to that?
Through you, Mayor, if I could take the opportunity, particularly in the instance of this incident, if I could just pass on that council would appreciate that people don't stick mop heads down the sewers, and Chuck's blue wipes. That's what we pulled out of this particular situation. It was very challenging for these 3 staff members at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, and I must say, and the author of the letter was not responsible for the mop heads of the Chucks. We don't know where they came from, but certainly if you're out there, please be careful what you put down the toilet. Yes, because mop heads aren't appropriate. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Atkins. Oh, sorry, Councillor Jones. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to have a quick with Acting GM Tim, Blackbutt Water, mate. Where are we at with that? Because I'm still getting complaints. I've had photos sent to me. These pensioners are buying $15 filters that are supposed to last 3 months, and they're not even lasting a week. And they're giving me. I was going to ring you offline, but anyway, where are we at, and what are we going to do down there, or how soon can we expect some sort of a solution to that problem? Because as you know, and you can take it on notice, mate. When are we looking like scouring the pipes or doing something down there to get that issue resolved?
Through you, Mayor. Actually, I can answer that off the top of my head. We're scheduled to do the scouring last week, but we had about 90% of our staff away with their own scouring issues, and so we're rescheduling that. The problem we've got at the moment is the Boonuma pipeline is offline for the rest of next week as well. So we will still have that iron and manganese problem for Blackbutt until the end of that. Once we get back onto the Boonuma pipeline, then we will staff willing and staff availability, we'll start the scouring program. We actually had a media release and a letterbox drop done up, ready to go, and we lost all our staff.
So when was that time again, Tim, that we're proposing to start? I missed that if you had mentioned it.
Okay, so we'll be still on the Boo Bear water until the end of next week. And so it'll be the following week that we're looking to do the air scouring, because it uses a lot more water to air scour, so we need the Boonuma pipeline.
So a fortnight's time.
That's correct.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Acting GM. Okay, we're ready to go to the vote on this one. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Last item on the agenda is 9.1, questions on notice. We have the one question. It was in relation to the timeframe for completion of the drainage works at Leopard Court. The response is as attached. And thank you to our infrastructure team for advising that the works on Leopard Court will be, at this stage, we're expecting that it would be completed by December 2022 all going well. Okay, so I now move that that response be received and noted. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Potter, thank you. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Okay, thank you all. We'll move to close the meeting at 11:54 a.m. Thank you all for your participation. Have a great rest of day. Thank you.